pretty uncontroversial to say that Gabe Newell is one of the few good billionaires. He is the co-founder of Valve Corporation, creator of Steam, and the platform that saved PC gaming from piracy and fragmentation. He's worth somewhere between $4 to $6 billion, and unlike other tech billionaires, he actually cares about the gamers. He doesn't chase shareholders, Valve stayed private, he doesn't rush games. Half-Life fans have been waiting for episode 3 since 2007, and Gabe refuses to compromise. He doesn't maximize extraction because Steam's 30% cut is the industry standard. It could be higher, you know? He doesn't abandon platforms. I mean, he supports Linux gaming when it's not even profitable. He's approachable, he's funny, he responds to emails, he shows up at conventions to hang with fans. PC gamers call him one of the most generous billionaires. Gaming forums defend him constantly. And the general consensus is, if we have to have billionaires, at least we got one of the good ones. 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 One of the good ones.
Step on it, Daddy!
So my goal for this video is to start an actual conversation about this, and I know that that's not going to be possible with a lot of Steam fanboys, but like, I just want to talk about this. I want to have an open discussion about having this balance between corporations who actually do consumer good but still operate within a monopoly and still do things that are quite questionable at best. So please be civil in the comments. Like, if this video goes quote unquote viral, it's because like people are actually talking about this. So if I'm gonna ask you to, you know, plug my stuff, do it for the sake of this conversation and this one subject. Obviously, I use Steam. Even my kids have their own Steam accounts right now. And yes, you can say that Gabe Newell made PC gaming more accessible in like the broad scope of things. But, you know, on my 20 years on this platform and thousands of hours, and even me applying at Valve here in the Pacific Northwest, part of the reason that I moved to this area, this isn't an outside hit piece. But here is the one thing that I am still extracting. When we call someone one of the good ones, we're not giving them a compliment, we're activating a mechanism. And when you see how it operates, you start recognizing it everywhere, including how the PC gaming communities talk about billionaires like Gabe Newell.
They got a make it, eh? I'm a black Scottish cyclops. They got more and they got the likes of me.
Like this phrase, one of the good ones, it does 3 things simultaneously. First, it conscripts you. When someone tells me that I'm one of the good ones, they're recruiting me into an agreement that most people of color fit whatever stereotype they're running, and I'm just somehow different. I get rewarded for performing distance from my perceived community. Second, it never is really about you. The approval only tracks how well you perform distance from said group flaws. My eldest daughter's already seeing forms of this at 12 years old. People praise her for being so articulate and for being able to read above a high school level, but they comment on her natural hair curls and the use of her slang. It always ends up being, but what about this? She's learning that acceptance means performing proximity to the standard, which, at least right now, is proximity to whiteness. Third, it completely kills systemic analysis. If I'm just one of the good black folks, then that means things like police brutality isn't about systemic issues. It's just bad black people not behaving like me, like how they should be acting. The exception becomes proof that the system works, and in many ways that the system is good. What you're doing is you're accepting a hierarchy, you're performing conditional distance, you're abandoning the critique of the system that everything lies in, all while feeling grateful for the compliment. Like, can you see why I find this type of idolization very problematic within itself? Like, taking everything I just said, let's apply all of this with how Gabe Newell is perceived and put on a pedestal within the PC gaming community.
I'm a grim-blooded fable with an unhappy bloody end.
So when Steam launched in 2003, the vast majority of PC gamers hated it. They loathed it. Always online DRM was a nightmare. You couldn't play Half-Life 2 without installing Steam and staying connected. You bought a disc, but Valve servers had to approve you playing your own game. Old school gaming forums went apocalyptic. People predicted that this would kill PC gaming. And look, they had reason to worry about things like DRM, ownership, and infrastructure control. The interface itself was disaster level bad. Early Steam looked like somebody's first GeoCities website. It was ugly, confusing, slow, constantly crashing, downloads failed constantly, and it felt like malware that you were forced to install. And when Half-Life 2 finally launched, the infrastructure of Steam collapsed under that weight. People who waited years for this game couldn't play it because Steam servers were down and therefore they couldn't authenticate the game that they paid money for. But Steam survived, and it was because it was attached to Half-Life 2. Valve leveraged one of gaming's most beloved franchises, at least on the PC side, to force adoption of a platform that gamers at the time despised. Like, let's be honest, it was monopolistic from day one. You wanted Half-Life 2, you accepted Steam, there was no alternatives. So here is what history shows. When people defend Steam with something like, oh, they earned their dominance, or they saved PC gaming, both are true. Steam did solve digital distribution problems, but we got used to the thing that we were being forced to accept. It worked well enough eventually that we forgot that we never really had much of a choice. In September of 2010, Team Fortress 2 introduces Manco supply crates. Now, the football/soccer series FIFA 2009 technically beat them to this punch. Ultimate Team launched in March of 2009, but let's talk about what Valve did that FIFA couldn't. Valve was able to make loot boxes acceptable to Western gaming audiences. Random crates would drop during gameplay, and you can see potential items inside, but to open it, you needed to buy a key from Valve for $2.49. What is that, folks?
Let's go gambling! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it!
Yep, gambling. Real money. Psychological triggers identical to slot machines. But Valve wrapped it in legitimization. It's just cosmetics. Player-to-player marketplace made it feel like its own economy. Valve also had the cultural prestige from things like Half-Life and Portal. Yes, FIFA had loot boxes first, but Valve actually made them desirable, defensible, and most importantly, normalized. And then CSGO perfected it. Weapon skins were thousands, and Valve takes 15% of every transaction that is made on the Steam marketplace. 5% transaction fee plus a 10% game fee. In a way, they did create artificial scarcity, gambling mechanics, and an unregulated secondary market, things that Valve still comes under fire for to this day, but it always gets hand-waved away the second that they announce something new. And in 2006, we start getting glimpses into the depth of this lotto system. Two YouTubers, T. Martin and Pro Syndicate, were gambling CSGO skins on a website called CSGO Lotto. They were encouraging their audiences, many of them children, to get in on this fun as well. But the thing that they never disclosed was that they owned CSGO Lotto. They were the president and vice president. They promoted gambling to minors with no FTC disclosures, and they were using the infrastructure that Valve built and profited from. The UK Gambling Commission's 2017 report found that 11% of children aged 11 to 16 had participated in skin gambling. That's roughly 500,000 children under 15 in the UK alone. And here's what makes this especially concerning. Researchers found that children aged 11 to 14 were more than twice as likely to engage in skin gambling compared to adults aged 22 to 24. Skin gambling isn't following kids into gambling, it's introducing gambling to children at earlier ages than traditional betting ever could. Well, up until the fact that we have a lot of the online gambling systems now that operate in a very similar manner. And in all of this, from the controversies, the fallout, the videos being made diving into this issue, Valve were still able to maintain plausible deniability about the gambling ecosystem that they created. So last month, October of 2025, Valve announced that they're changing how items drop in CSGO crates. Items like knives and gloves, which are the rarest items you can get in the game, can now be obtained by trading up lower value and lower quality items. Before this, you needed to get those random crate drops. And the result of this is that the cosmetic economy of that video game crashed. $2 billion gone overnight. But even after that complete collapse, the CSGO skin economy is still worth a cool $4 to $6 billion. Like, can we just, like, I need to say that out loud so we can acknowledge how obscene this is. The market for digital cosmetics in one video game worth billions after a complete market crash. In a very vocal portion of the community discourse, market stability, whether Valve gave us enough of a warning, how this affected investors of all people. Valve may be private, but they have their own shareholders, let's be honest. Not too many people were asking, should a game company run an unregulated commodities market? Like, here is a thing that Valve has helped normalize. They demonstrated that you could sell a complete game, a way to fund some of their more innovative projects or experimental hardware, their VR development, through free-to-play framework with heavy microtransactions. Half-Life Alyx is a Steam exclusive. You can't buy Half-Life on modern platforms most anywhere except for Steam. Someone correct me if you can buy Half-Life on platforms like GOG. The innovation that we celebrate was built on the extraction model that they perfected, and the industry followed along because why make one sale when you can make infinite small ones? Battle passes. This is a fun one. Dota 2's compendium in 2013 created the template that every game uses now. Pay for the privilege of grinding rewards that you already paid for in regards to entry into the game. Yes, I'm talking about you, Call of Duty. The FOMO-driven limited time purchases, Valve wrote that playbook. And yes, you can say, well, that money went to fund the international competition, but come on, let's be honest here, Valve could fund that on their own. Key to open mechanics. Like, this tactic is very much like that first taste for free. You don't just buy the loot crates, you earn the boxes for free, and then you buy the key. This creates the illusion that you're already invested in this unopened box. It's Schrodinger's hat, like quite literally. Valve made this psychological manipulation the standard. And if you're gonna be a platform monopoly, I mean, can we at least work on the curation as well? Here's the thing about monopoly power, you don't have to provide quality control when there's no alternative. Steam's storefront is flooded with asset flips, AI-generated slot, barely functional games, very questionable sussy baka games, and they have the resources to curate, but they choose not to because, you know, they want to say free market of ideals, or because where else are people gonna go? And they may have like great customer service, which people constantly point to as evidence of their ethics, but they're clearly not reinvesting their monopoly profits into basic quality control that would also benefit users. Like, this is what a monopoly looks like when it's working as intended. You don't need to innovate on user experience when users have no viable alternatives. You don't need to curate when developers have no other platform with equivalent reach. You don't need to police your ecosystem when the ecosystem itself generates billions regardless. Statistically speaking, Steam is a monopoly. And Valve has used that position to normalize practices that have fundamentally harmed the modern gaming landscape. The fact that people are now praying at the altar of Steam, defending these practices as necessary or minimizing them as just cosmetics or just as in the past, or just ignoring them entirely because the launcher works well, that's how you know the normalization is complete. And it's not just gambling mechanics where Valve has avoided scrutiny. In January of 2021, the European Commission fined Valve and 5 other video game publishers nearly 8 million euros for geo-blocking practices, which was preventing gamers in certain EU countries from activating games that were bought in other regions. Here's where it gets interesting. Bandai Namco, Capcom, Focus Home, Koch Media, and ZeniMax all cooperated with the investigation and received 10 to 15% reductions in their fines. But Valve refused to cooperate and got hit with the full 1.6 million euro fine, and then they appealed. They were the only company to appeal. In September of 2023, the EU General Court rejected Valve's appeal, confirming that the geo-blocking practices violated antitrust law. The court found that Valve's system existed specifically to protect publisher royalties and, quote, the margins earned by Valve. But that's not their only ongoing legal issue. Right now, Valve is facing a massive antitrust lawsuit in the United States over something called a Platform Most Favored Nation clause. So here's how it works. If you're a game dev and you want to sell your game on Steam, Valve's policies allegedly require you to sell that game at the same price or higher on every other platform. So going back to Epic Games' 12% cut over Steam's 30%, theoretically a developer could sell their game cheaper on Epic and still make the same profit. But Valve's clause prevents that, which means that other platforms can't compete on price, even when they offer better revenue splits. In November of 2024, a federal judge certified a class of approximately 32,000 game developers who were suing Valve over these practices, alleging violations of the Sherman Act, the same federal law that went after Microsoft in the 90s. The judge found that plaintiffs presented compelling evidence that Valve's policies suppress competition and maintain monopoly power. The case is still ongoing, but here's the pattern. When scrutinized by regulators in Europe, Valve fights instead of cooperating, unlike every other company involved. When facing antitrust allegations in the US, Valve maintains policies that prevent competitors from offering better deals to developers or consumers. And through all of this, the gaming community continues defending Valve as one of the good ones because the launcher works well and Gabe responds to emails. And here's just what makes that timing just completely perfect. Valve just announced that they're bringing back the Steam machine. It's a mini PC running Steam OS, plus the Steam Frame VR headset and the new Steam controller. People are already dubbing this machine the Gabe Cube. And I mean, that would be cute, except we live in a post-Trump world. We've seen what happens when affectionate nicknames and memes transform wealthy men into folk heroes, when he's one of the good ones becomes permission to stop questioning power. The Gabe Cube isn't just a cute little fun nickname, it's evidence of the exact worship dynamic I'm trying to point out here. Like, so much of this reminds me of the Microsoft antitrust case from the 90s. So for those of you who don't know, back in the 90s, Microsoft came under government scrutiny for being a monopoly, for being too good, for being too dominant. So here are some of the facts of that case. Microsoft's market share in the 1990s was 80% of PC's operating systems. Right now, Steam's market share is about 75% of PC game distribution. The DOJ sued Microsoft for bundling Internet Explorer with Windows, using their dominance in one market to control another. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and reapproach these new Steam machine announcements. So now we know that Valve controls the platform with the Steam Store, they control the operating system with Steam OS, they control the hardware with the Steam Deck, the Steam Machine, and the Steam VR frame and controllers, and they control the vast majority of the PC gaming marketplace via the transactions that go in and out of Steam. They are more vertically integrated than Microsoft ever was. Microsoft didn't manufacture PCs. Well, they didn't back then. Valve is building a walled garden. Apple builds a closed ecosystem. It's terrible. Anti-consumer. Console makers build a closed ecosystem. That's why PC gaming is always going to be superior. But Valve builds a closed ecosystem with a couple very small doors that you can get through. It's innovation. It's still technically consumer choice. Yes, SteamOS is technically Linux, but the practical effect is identical. Buy Valve hardware, runs Valve OS, serves Valve storefront, Valve takes cuts. The mechanism is identical, the only difference is which altar you're willing to get on your knees for.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Also, going back to Valve taking a 30% cut as an industry standard, let's go ahead and highlight Epic Games real quick. So right now, Epic Games in the Epic Games Store, which hosts Fortnite, that has a 3% market share by revenue. But the interesting thing is that Epic will offer an 88-12 split versus Steam's 70-30 split. Now, most immediate reactions to that will be like, yeah, despite all that, Epic still provides an inferior service. But that's exactly the point. Tim Sweeney didn't just compete, he publicly called out the 30% cut as exploitative. He proved that you can provide the same infrastructure for 12%, and despite being objectively better for developers and therefore consumers, and despite unlimited Fortnite money, and despite securing very major exclusives both with their games and without, Epic only has that 3% of the market share. And that's not just Epic failing, that's proof of monopoly power. When a competitor can offer developers twice the value and still only get 3%, that's not competition. Failing that is the ecosystem being locked into everything already. Everything you own within Steam can only live within Steam. You can't transfer it anywhere else, whether it be for your own wants and needs or for wanting to give it to someone that you love, like your child. You can't move it anywhere. Steam doesn't need to respond to Epic's better split. Developers just literally cannot afford to miss 75% of that market share. And the ability to ignore competitive pressure to extract 30% when competitors can provide a better wage at 12%, literally monopoly power. Someone on Reddit said to me, "I prefer a free game with loot boxes from a good corpo than paying higher prices." To me, that's a translation for I'd rather pay nothing and let developers get screwed by gambling than pay creators fairly. And like, this is what happens when we worship billionaires and capitalists. We start thinking that art should be free or cheap, that gambling mechanics are acceptable trade-offs for a big payday, and most egregiously, Valve's 30% marketplace fees are fine because the games are cheap or because that's just the industry standard. Like, when you defend free games with loot boxes over paying for games, you're not making a consumer choice. You're accepting that creators deserve less so a billionaire's corporation can extract more. Gabe owns multiple yachts. That's not pro-consumer, that is anti-creator, while Valve is profiting from both sides of the argument. Like me just trying to have some casual conversations about this on Reddit, I already started losing my mind. That is why I had to make this video. So as we wrap up, allow me to reveal my final trap card for any other naysayers. If you have that clippy profile picture right now, if you follow Louis Rossmann's work, then you already understand the approach that I am coming from, and to be quite honest, I don't really want to hear any of your comments about how I'm a hypocrite or how Valve is doing something good. Tech YouTuber Louis Rossmann, he demonstrates something very critical. He talks about how to separate the product from the company, from the corporation. You can marvel at Apple's engineering and their ability to make really nice devices, but you can still call them out for things like having serialized parts and basically removing the ability to have a right to repair your own devices. He doesn't pretend that you have to hate Apple products to critique Apple's business practices. He doesn't claim that using an iPhone makes you complicit in any type of evil. He insists that we clearly see what we are dealing with. That separation, the product from the company, from the corporation, that's the nuance that I think is really required when discussing tech companies that encompass this much of our daily lives. Because they do encompass this much of our daily lives now. Steam isn't just where I buy my games, it's my library, it's my friends list, it's my workshop content. And that's what I'm doing here with Valve. It's the same framework, it's a different industry, it's different fanboys. The Good Billionaire label technically doesn't exist. Not because every individual billionaire is personally evil, but because accumulating $1 billion requires exploitation at scales that have to harm communities. I lost my breath there, getting heated, but that's the thing that I'm trying to teach my kids about critical thinking that some of you are obviously missing. I can think Valve have talented engineers making interesting hardware, also recognizing that the business model enabling that hardware was built on practices that still continue to harm the industry that I love to this very day. The industry that has been hemorrhaging tens of thousands of people for the past almost 3 years. The Steam Deck and the Steam Frame are both genuinely innovative, and they were both used by monopoly power to be made possible. Both things are true, and that's what I'm doing here with Valve. It's the same framework, different industry, different fanboys, different glazing. But we can also acknowledge what his wealth represents and what his platform has both done to help and hinder this hobby that we love so much. I will end with a quote from the creator of a video game series called DayZ. The creator, Dean Hall, said it like this: Valve does not get anywhere near enough criticism, specifically citing gambling mechanics having absolutely no place in video games. The worship culture shields them from necessary scrutiny. The one of the good ones trap wants you to choose, either worship uncritically or reject completely. But that's not how that world works. Yes, I'm gonna give my kids my Steam password when I die because there is no other way for me to transfer my games to them legally. And because of that, I think I can still critique what type of dominance Steam has achieved and what the costs were. It's not hypocrisy, that's living in a system while being honest about what that system really is. Alright, and this is the part where I need to probably just wrap it up because I could just spend the entire time reacting to some of the dumbest takes I've seen online and getting really angry about that, but that's not what this channel is about. It's stern but fair. I may be a dad, but I can also be like a stepdad. I'm stern but fair. So let me know what you think. Like I said, I still use Steam. I don't care if you use Steam, but the thing is, if we're going to talk about how good Steam is for the industry, we also need to be completely open and honest about what it could do better and what we should demand that it does better, because it never will. Remember, Google started out with "don't be evil," and look where it is now. All of these tech companies started out being lauded and applauded for doing these innovative things for the people, and now they dominate our lives. And then the last thing that I want is for that to end up like Steam, because like everyone says, I'm afraid of what's going to happen when Gaben dies, so let's talk about it now, okay? Instead of just waiting until then. So I'm going to go ahead and go grab some lunch. You guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Everyone be cool. Like in Pulp Fiction, everyone just be cool. And just don't fight, all right? Well, I'll talk to you guys later. Like I said, maybe ask one of your bigger YouTuber friends or one of your bigger YouTuber channels to give their input on this, not because it's going to give me more views, but because I genuinely want to know what they think, and there's no other way for me to get this conversation started. So shill for me, please. I am the shill up now. Thank you. Okay, I love you. Bye.